When is enough enough? When is it that you have to hang up the collecting hat, if you will, and you move on to your next chapter in life? Or do you even do that? I know it's a topic that others have talked about previously, but I need to address it now. And it's been asked, I've been asked a few times, when do you see yourself stopping? And I don't have an answer for that. I've always said I'll slow down before I stop. Obviously, money and space are not infinite. They can run out at times, especially space over money. And so when, do you have a collecting end game? I've been asked that. I guess a good way of saying it. Is there an out? I've had other people I've talked to about it that are very specific. They know what they want. I want to collect a certain type of figures, or there's certain characters that I want, and then I'm good just hanging it up. And also people look at it as they do not want to burden their significant others or their family with their stuff. And so they might even go to the extremes of selling off everything. I know for me, I've collected things for many years, like when I say that I'm a collector, and I hate that phrase, I'm a collector. It's like, here's my card, I'm a collector. But I collect a little bit of everything. And Hot Toys, I've been collecting since 2020, but I've been collecting literally anything since I was about 7 or 8 years old. And so oftentimes when I get asked, well, how long have you been collecting? I ask, well, what do you mean? Do you mean Hot Toys, or do you mean in general? Because there's two very distinctive time frames. Hot Toys, 2020. Anything since I was 7 or 8 years old. It's very simple. For many, Hot Toys is your first real investment into collecting, or many come from Funkos. So I've come from earliest on Legos, McFarlane sports picks, McFarlane action figures, Pokemon cards, baseball cards, all types of sports cards, like I said, Legos, things like that. So sports memorabilia. I mean, that was my last big hiatus out, was sports memorabilia when I got out of that. And that money I invested into Hot Toys and 6 scale. So I know for me, when I was asked that question, I said, no, I don't have an end game. I don't. I'm enjoying. And that's what it is that I think sometimes I still look at it as enjoyment. I never try to look at it as a stressful thing. I've always said when it starts to get too stressful, that's a flag that you need to kind of reevaluate what's going on. It can be a very expensive hobby, yes. Financially investment, absolutely. And so it's smart but at the end of the day, that's what it is, right? This stuff is just, it's meaningless stuff. It's meaningless stuff that has no value to anybody else but us. That's just what it is. And I do mean that honestly. Like, this is just meaningless stuff that just fills a hole, a void in our lives that gives us, whether it's nostalgia or anything like that. It's an escape, as I've said before, a vice. But, the question is, do you have an end game? If you're watching this video, and it doesn't matter whether you collect Marvel Legends, Hot Toys, in art, it doesn't matter. Do you have an end game? Or are you kind of like me, where it's like, well, I'll slow down first. And that's every year I try to slow down a little bit more and more and buy a little bit less. I'm not saying that less is more by any stretch of the imagination, but I am trying to plan ahead. Like I bought Module cases for my basement that is currently being renovated into a collection room that I've never officially really had one that's been permanent, that's like mine. And so by me buying a little bit less every year, I might just be shifting my focus on stuff. This year in 2024, which I'll recap at the end of the year, has been an amazing year when it came to buying stuff. There's so much stuff that I bought that I never thought I'd have the ability or means to do so. And I've been very blessed with that opportunity. But every year I do try to maybe focus my collecting style and be a little bit more narrow every year, just a little bit more. It doesn't have to be drastic, but I don't have an end game in terms of, and I don't have a cap in terms of, well, X amount of figures. It's just my tastes have become a little bit different in terms of what I want, and I think that's just a natural progression of stuff. And so I'm also trying to future-proof myself when it comes to always wanting to have space. Am I willing to sell stuff off? Of course, if it really came to that. But I've only ever sold stuff off one time where I purged like 5 figures, and I've never sold anything else before that. It was like 2021 I've sold some stuff. But when I get asked about if I have an out, I don't have an out right now, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I do have collector's insurance on all my stuff, so if something happened, I do have, you know, insurance on everything. I pay yearly for collector's insurance on all my stuff, so if God forbid something happens, I do have coverage in that aspect. But I know I've talked to other friends about this topic before, and it's come up every so often, especially, and you know, I've heard different stories about what people's plans are, and it is fascinating to hear what other people have as an out, because I don't think you think about that, right? You live in the moment and you just think about getting stuff, you know, here and there, but do you really plan for the future that much of where you're going to get out? And even if you stop buying, do you plan on keeping what you have or just purging everything and getting rid of it? Do you plan on staying involved with, you know, drops, social media, or do you plan on just getting out of everything altogether? I've seen some that plan on exiling out of everything in terms of social media, things like that. They don't want me involved in it at all. And then some that will just kind of dial back on buying altogether, but are still interested in talking about stuff and still being involved. So I've heard a bunch of different ways of people how they plan to, at one point or another, kind of manage their exit in from the 6 scale or whatever it is. And so, and you know, the thing about Marvel Legends and SH Figuarts, they might be less expensive, but just because they are, it does end up meaning that you'll probably end up buying more of them quantity wise, so they can just be as dangerous as 6 scale. So I'm just curious to know what, if you're watching this video, what your collecting endgame is, or do you have plans, or have you ever thought about an endgame? I've never thought about it, as I said, unless I've been asked about it and I give the answer. Like, I'll slow down before that, but I don't ever foresee myself just completely stop purchasing stuff. When it comes to specifically 6 scale, Marvel Legends, things like that, I'm still always gonna probably be in there because it's very hard, because companies are just making so much awesome shit. So it's impossible just to say no to completely everything. And a lot of companies like Hot Toys maybe see that, and that's when they start 2.0ing or reissuing things that you never had a chance to get before. So companies are smart, I think, in adapting to knowing what collectors are kind of going through, and they figure out ways to kind of keep people engaged, whether it's like stuff from different IPs or bringing out things from the vault or whatever it may be to pique interest still in people. So they're making it very hard, and especially if you're a collector that's kind of, you're dabbling in different scales, different companies, vehicles, dioramas, all that stuff, it's very, 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 very hard. But to wrap up this video, once again, what is your end game strategy if you have one? That is the point of this video, and I kind of talked to you about what mine is. I don't have one per se. I'm slowing down on stuff before I do that. That's not tapping out. That's not doing that kind of stuff. But I'm just curious to know what your thoughts are. So drop a like on this video, drop a comment specifically. I'm very curious to know what your thoughts are. Please consider subscribing to the channel. And until then, as always, this is Mr. Mom Collectibles saying take care, and I will see you guys in the next video.